This is Walk Two Moons, Chapter 12, The Marriage Bed. When I had first started telling Phoebe's story, Graham and Gramps sat quietly and listened. Gramps concentrated on the road, and Graham gazed out the window. Occasionally, they interjected a "gall dang" or a "no kidding." But as I got farther into the story, they began to interrupt more and more. When I told about the message, everyone has his own agenda. Graham thumped on the dashboard and said, "Isn't that the truth? Lordy, isn't that what it's all about?" I said, "How do you mean?" "Everybody is just walking along concerned with his own problems, his own life, his own worries. And we're all expecting other people to tune into our agenda. Look at my worry. Worry with me. Step into my life. Care about my problems. Care about me," Graham sighed. Gramps scratched his head. "You turning into a philosopher or something?" "Mind your own agenda," she said. When I mentioned about Ben asking where my mother was and me saying that she was in Lewiston, but that I didn't want to elaborate, Graham and Gramps looked at each other. Gramps said, "One time my father took off for 6 months and didn't tell a soul where he was going. When my best friend asked me where my father was, I hauled off and punched him in the jaw. My best friend, I punched him in the dang jaw." "You never told me that," Gramps said. "I hope he socked you back." Gramps pointed to that gap in his teeth. "See that? He knocked my tooth out." And when I told Graham and Gramps about flinching when Ben touched me and how I went home and found Dad in the garage, Graham unbuckled her seatbelt, turned all the way around, and leaned over the back of the seat. She took my hand and kissed it. Gramps said, "Give her one for me too," and so Grandma kissed my hand again. Several times when I described Phoebe's world of lunatics and axe murderers, Graham said, "Just like Gloria. I swear to goodness, just exactly like Gloria." Once, after she said this, Gramps got a dreamy look on his face, and Graham said, "Quit mooning over that Gloria. I know what you're thinking." Gramps said, "Hear that, Chickabiddy? This here gooseberry knows everything that runs through my head. Isn't she something?" Just before we reached the South Dakota border, Gramps took a detour north because he had seen a sign advertising the Pipestone National Monuments in Pipestone, Minnesota. On the sign was a picture of an Indian smoking a pipe. "What do you want to go see an old Indian smoking a pipe for?" Graham asked. She didn't like the term Native American any more than my mother did. "I just do," Graham said. "We might not ever get the chance to again." "To see an Indian smoking a pipe?" Graham said. "Will it take very long?" I asked as the air screamed, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." "Not too long, Chickabiddy. We gotta cool off our carburetors. These roads are taking the poop out of me." The detour to Pipestone wound through a cold, dark forest, and if you closed your eyes and smelled the air, you could smell By Banks, Kentucky. Pipestone was a small town. Everywhere we went, people were talking to each other, standing there talking, or sitting on a bench talking, or walking along the street talking. When we passed by, they looked up right at us in our faces and said, "Hi" or "Howdy," although it sounds corny to say, we felt right at home there. It was so like By Banks, where everyone you see stops to say something because they know you and have known you their whole lives. We went to the Pipestone National Monument and saw Indians thunking away at the stone in the quarry. I asked one if he was a Native American, but he said, "No, I'm a person." And I said, "But are you a Native American person?" He said, "No, I'm an American Indian person." I said, "So am I, in my blood." We watched other American Indian persons making pipes out of this stone. In the Pipe Museum, we learned more about pipes than any human ought to know. In a little clearing outside the museum, an American Indian person was sitting on a tree stump smoking a long peace pipe. After watching him for about 5 minutes, Gramps asked if he could try. The man passed Gramps the pipe, and Gramps sat down in the grass, took 2 puffs, and passed it to Graham. She didn't even blink. She took 2 puffs and passed it to me. There was a sweet, sticky taste on the end of the pipe. With the stem in my mouth, I gave 2 little kisses, which is what it looked like Graham and Gramps had done. The smoke came into my mouth, and I held it there while I passed the pipe back. I held that smoke in my mouth while Graham and Gramps puffed some more. I was feeling slightly wang-doodled. I opened my mouth a wee bit, and a tiny stream of smoke curled out into the air. And when I saw that, for some reason, I was reminded of my mother. It didn't make any sense, but my brain was saying, "There goes your mother," and I watched the trail of smoke disappear into the air. In the shop attached to the Pipe Museum, Gramps bought 2 peace pipes. One was for him and one was for me. It's not for smoking with, he said. It's for remembering with. That night we stayed at Injun Joe's Peace Palace Motel. On a sign in the lobby, someone had crossed out Injun and written Native American, so the whole sign read, Native American Joe's Peace Palace Motel. In our room, the Injun Joe's embroidered on the towels had been changed with a black marker to Indian Joe's. I wished everybody would just make up their minds. By now, I was used to staying in a room with Gram and Gramps. Every night when they climbed into bed, they lay right there beside each other on their backs, and Gramps said, every single night, well, this ain't our marriage bed, but it will do. Probably the most precious thing in the whole world to Gramps, besides Gram, was their marriage bed. This is what he called the bed back home in By Banks, Kentucky. One of the stories that Gramps liked to tell was about how he and all his brothers had been born in that bed, and all of Gram and Gramps' own children had been born in that same bed. When Gramps tells this story, he starts with when he was 17 years old and living with his parents in By Banks. That's when he met Gram. She was visiting her aunt who lived in the meadow from where Gramps lived. It was a wild thing then, Gramps said, and I didn't stand still for any girl, I can tell you that. They had to try to catch Gramps on the run, but when he saw Gram running in the meadow with her long hair as silky as a filly's, he was the one who was trying to do the catching. Talk about your wild things. Your grandmother was the wildest, most untamed, most ornery and beautiful creature ever to grace this earth. Gramps said he followed her like a sick old dog for 22 days, and on the 23rd day, he marched up to her father and asked if he could marry her. Her father said, if you can get her to stand still long enough and she'll have you, I guess you can. When Gramps asked Gram to marry him, she said, do you have a dog? Gramps said that yes, as a matter of fact, he had a fat old beagle named Sadie. Gram said, and where does she sleep? Gramps stumbled around a bit and said, to tell you the truth, she sleeps right next to me. But if we were to get married, And when you come in the door at night, Gramps said, what does that dog do? Gramps could not figure out what she was getting at, so he just told the truth. She jumps all over me, a licking and a howling. And what do you do? Gramps said. Well, gosh, Gramps said. He did not like to admit it, but he said, I take her on my lap and I pet her till she calms down. And sometimes I sing her a song. You're making me feel foolish. I don't mean to, she said. You've told me all I need to know. I figured if you treat a dog that good, you'll treat me better. I figure if that old beagle Sadie loves you so much, I'll probably love you better. Yes, I'll marry you.